What's up, creeps? Welcome to a brand new review episode of the Epic Film Guys podcast. I'm Justin, and on this episode, I am joined by a very special guest. We're going to be talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, which just landed in theaters last week. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going solo as an EFG member, but I got someone that's filling that gap pretty fucking well tonight. Welcome, Jason Rockman of the Rockman Power Hour. What is up, dude?
Dude, how are you?
I mean, we're recording after I just got done with work, but I can't wait to talk about this movie. Just got to see it yesterday, finally. I felt I was so late getting this thing. I did not get a chance to make our early press screening, so I was just sitting there chomping at the fucking bit, looking at everybody else's opinions, and finally, Memorial Day weekend, had a chance to go see it with my wife. But our listeners may not know or may not be initiated with what the Rockman Power Hour is. Why don't you just give them a little bit of an inside peek as to what your show is and what you do?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad we were able to make this happen. I've been a fan of you guys for a while now. We have a common friend, Maurice, who always sings your praises. And so I'm really, really glad we were able to do this. Rockman Power Hour, basically, it's kind of an extension of what I used to do. I was on radio and I was on air in Montreal for about 14 years, and I used to interview a lot of people. So I decided about 2 years before my radio show ended that I wanted to start my own podcast because it had been time. In radio, you're limited to maybe 3 or 4 minute interview. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to extend them. And the problem was, in radio, it was still kind of frowned upon to have a podcast because the two were still kind of clashing. Now it's very much changed. They want you to do all of that stuff. But it's just pretty much a podcast where we talk to people, interesting people in the world of pop culture, whether it be music, film, whatever, you know. And what's great about it is that we talk to a real wide variety of people. We don't limit it just to a certain genre of music. We just talk to who we think is interesting. Sometimes we'll have movie creators on. Sometimes we'll have, again, musicians, writers, actors. It just really, really depends. But we have a lot of fun with it. It's a real labor of love, like, you know. I mean, putting on a podcast takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, but we really enjoy it. And like you, we get invited to, to press screenings. We get invited to see stuff early. And the idea of talking to another fan about this movie is what I wanted to do. So, and I was hoping it would come up. I was like, maybe someone will want to talk about this. So when you invited me, I was like, perfect, because there's so much around this movie, not just leading up to the release, but the weekend after, where the week after the opening weekend, where everyone's just analyzing how well it did, and all these subjects are coming up, and all this, is it pandering to, the main character's pandering? Is it a Me Too kind of thing? Like, it's just so much talk around this movie that a lot of people aren't even talking about the film itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Freaking amazing. So, so I like to talk like you, and that's what I do in Canada. And I'm glad we were able to do this today. I'm super excited.
Yeah, we had talked about it, I think, a few months back, a little bit, shot the shit on this movie because, this show, Epic Film Guys, just celebrated its 10-year anniversary, and I remember reviewing this, or the Fury Road, rather.
Fury Road,
and I remember seeing it opening night, and it's just crazy that almost 10 years later, here we are. I just said, this one has to be discussed. We do, we do all different kinds of movies, but we primarily focus in on horror. We're kind of like known as that. They do Batman and then horror shit too. Show, but I get to pick and choose whatever I want to talk about. And this was one that we definitely wanted to have you on for, because I know through the grapevine that you're a huge fan of this series. So
I really am. I mean, Mad Max for me, it's funny because I don't have it here, but if you turn the corner of my house in the dining room, I've got a 40 by 60 of the original Mad Max from 79, which is in mint condition. It's like my pride and joy. And what's great about the 40 by 60 posters versus like the 24 by 36 or 24 by 36, a lot of those were folded,
right?
So you have all those fold lines, but the 40 by 60s were the ones that they would send to the theater rolled, and they were for outside. So the great thing is, if you can find one in good shape, they're rolled, they're not folded. Unfortunate thing is that most of the time they were used outside of the theater to get people to come in, and they were trashed by rain, by water, by dirt. So it's one of my favorite things. And that, that original Mad Max poster is just so iconic. It's it It really is. So I've been obsessed with Mad Max. I didn't see Mad Max first. I saw The Road Warrior first, which is pretty much
I
the way
think
it goes.
a lot of people, right? Because that was
Yeah.
for me too, as at a young age. My buddy had it on VHS. I watched that one, and then we went backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, in Australia, it was called Mad Max 2,
right.
The Road Warrior. So The Road Warrior was my first introduction. I remember seeing it. My mom started dating my stepdad, so I probably was about maybe 10 years old or 11 years old. I was really, really young. And we went over to his house and he had it on VHS. And I remember popping it in and I was like, what is this? And he had rented it. And they plopped me down in the living room and I watched it. They were probably fooling around in the bedroom. Right. Well, you know, they've been married 40 years now, but the memory of that is like going into his apartment. He had this really cool apartment downtown. It was like, wow, this is really cool. This guy's cool. And he's got this movie and I'm allowed to watch it. And I know I'm not supposed to watch this. So I watched it and I became obsessed with Mad Max. And of course, you know, when Thunderdome came out, I remember seeing that in the theaters. And then there was this lull, you know, there was nothing for Mad Max fans except for, you know, rewatching the trilogy, and everyone would kind of like Star Wars, you know, it's that trilogy. A lot of us lived with that trilogy forever and ever and ever until there was new stuff. The difference is we got Fury Road and it was like, to me, when George Miller put that movie out, it was like him coming back and going, oh, by the way, I just want to let you all know that I can fucking do this and I have nothing to prove, but here you go. And I'm going to bounce now. And that's what it felt like. It was just like, it was like the biggest dick measuring contest. And he comes out and he's like, I've got a 12-incher. He's like, boom, puts it on the table. It's throbbing. And you're like, holy fuck, that thing's huge. And then puts it away and leaves. Sorry, I don't mean to be graphic.
Oh, no. I mean, listen. The shit we used to say on this show, believe me, my friend.
But but it really felt like that. Like when you watch George Miller's, it felt like he was flexing, but in a very humble way. But he was showing people that, hey, I still know how to make an action movie. And don't forget, I made some of the biggest ones that have ever been made. And Fury Road was freaking unbelievable. You know, I remember watching that movie in the theater and, you know, the way the movie's kind of like in 3 acts. I remember after everyone just like looking at the person next to me and catching my breath and going, holy shit. And the same thing happened in Furiosa because there's these little breaks in the movie. And I remember just looking at my wife who was on my left and then Maurice who was on my right. And I was like, this is fucking, and I was just so happy in the movie theater watching that movie. So I was very excited for this. It didn't disappoint, but I mean, obviously we're going to dig into it, but I'm a big fan of the series. You know, I've got stuff like this, which is, I don't know if you remember when Max was eating the dog food. Like this is a recreation of that actual brand from Australia that somebody made.
That's awesome.
So I've got all kinds of weird Mad Max shit. You know, I've got like the three movies on vinyl and stuff. And but yeah, I'm a big fan. So I'm really excited to dive into this and talk about this movie.
Amazing. Glad to hear it. That's why I knew you were the right man for the job. So clearly your anticipation, you know, almost 10 years after the masterpiece that was Fury Road, was pretty high for this. I think it needs to be discussed a little bit before we jump into the movie itself, because there is this fine line between fan anticipation and excitement versus general audience excitement. And unfortunately, we just had the lowest Memorial Day weekend at the box office since Casper in 1995. On a budget of 168 million, Furiosa made only 64.8 million as of this recording date. And even the fucking Garfield movie with Chris Pratt didn't do as well as everyone thought that was going to do. Huge difference. This looked amazing. That looked like shit. And I haven't seen it yet, so I can't say. I'm a Garfield guy. I didn't see it. And I had a few people that know my love of Garfield, like the strip, the cartoon, everything. Yeah. You know, I'm one of those guys that still has Garfield suction cup on the inside of his car. They were like, dude, you're better off. Believe me, just you could see it, but I don't want you to hurt yourself. So
that happens sometimes. Like, you know, The Exorcist, right? Like one of my favorite of all time. Like, oh
God, you're not gonna bring that one up, are you?
Yeah, that was like, I mean, I remember when I went to go see Exorcist Believer, and I was hosting the screening.
Me too. We both did. I remember you talking about that. Yes, you had me do trivia and stuff beforehand.
Right. And I had to host it. And I remember that I was so excited for this movie. I mean, I had gotten, you know, like candles and like coffee mug and all this stuff to promo it.
Yep.
And I was, studio gave me stuff and like, I'm a nerd. I love this shit. Thank you. And I was so excited. And then fucking that morning when I was going to host it, all the advanced reviews came out and it was just like, people were like, it's worse than you. It's bad. I hate to break the news to you. It's bad. And I think I remember talking to you about it and we were just saying like, oh, and I think you had told me you had seen it before and you were like, you know what, man? That sometimes those pills are really, really hard ones to swallow. And that one in particular was like, so I can understand, with Garfield, it's like Madam Web. Like
of all things, right? Garfield, but it's Garfield.
No, but listen, when you like something and something's bad, it's like, it's strange, but I was really disappointed with Exorcist Believer. I thought it was just like a steaming pile of dung. But it's still like, I was still excited to see it. And when I had to host that screening and like kind of knowing in the back of my mind, this is not going to be great. It was just like, so it's rough when you have something that you really, really enjoy and you're like, oh man, they mess this up. But that wasn't the case for Furiosa for me.
No, I mean, definitely. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned all that Exorcist merch because I still have the box of most of it sitting in my basement, like in the room next to this one. No one wants any of it. T-shirts say, ladies and gentlemen, if you want Exorcist Believer shirts, posters, candles,
you have it all.
Message.
Do you have the coffee mug where you put the hot water in and it changes?
You know what? I did keep that one.
Yeah, I have that. That's
right. My daughter uses that all the time. But back to the point of the matter. This is a discussion that a lot of people are having right now on film Twitter and in movie forums and such. Why are movies so-called failing at the box office right now? Why are people not coming out to see big movies? I mean, this is a general topic that continues to rear its ugly head. I mean, we've had a few big hits this year, but nothing that is setting the world on fire. What do you think? I mean, I know it may be different up in Canada versus the States, but do you have any kind of perspective or opinion that you'd like to share on why you think this could be?
It's funny because I think that theaters are it's fun. I think theaters are still the place to see movies. And I think people that when they do go and they get their butts off, the couch and they actually show up to the cinema, they remember how much fun it is. But I think a lot of people are just financially, they're just being a little more cautious with their spending. I think people can get a little lazy because they know the pattern now. They know like, hey, that's going to be on streaming in, a month, maybe even less sometimes. I'll be able to buy that on demand and watch it at home and pause and go pee and, and not have to pay for popcorn and not have to pay for a drink. And like, so there's so many factors involved, but the reality is, when you see a movie like this, like I saw this in IMAX, I was exactly in the center of the theater. I was in the perfect sweet spot. And I mean, it was an experience. And I think what people have to remember is that going to the movies is an experience. And you can't deny yourself that because you're denying yourself. I think personally being someone who loves film, seeing a film on your phone or even on a big TV, like I'm sure you got a big TV at home. I've got a big TV, but it's not the same. When you see this in a theater or any big blockbuster, it's magic. It's you get transformed and not transformed, but you get transported to another place. And I think people forget that. And also they've been deceived so many times by going to see something and it does suck. So I think it's a delicate balance and people are very, very cautious about where they spend their money. So I think, I think there's all those things that come into play. But then you get a movie like, Top Gun Maverick that comes out. Granted, the timing of it was perfect because it came out like right after everything opened up, but that movie just absolutely slayed. So there was the nostalgia factor, it had been 30 something years since the first Top Gun movie. So you can't say it's because people forgot, but just sometimes it's just the formula's right. And I think with this, I'm still convinced that there's going to be multiple viewers that are going to go see this movie a few times. I still think it's going to find its audience, but it's just timing sometimes is everything. And I think it's just what happens to some movies. And I think it's really unfortunate with this one because the narrative now is that it didn't make money. And then you get the other negative people that are like, well, it's a female lead. There was no Max. So there's all these reasons people want to pile on as to why it financially didn't do well. But the fact of the matter is the movie is fucking awesome. Okay. No one can deny that the movie is great and the reviews are great. So it's weird when you have a really well-reviewed film that doesn't do well at the box office or performs, underwhelmingly. I think that, I think it'll make its money back. I do. I don't think it's going to be a giant loss. I think it'll make its money back in time. But as like an opening weekend disappointment, yeah, it is disappointing for sure. Yeah. And I think there was some weather issues going on in the US as well. If I'm not mistaken, there was some, or is that now? Because
I don't know. On the East Coast, I didn't see anything. I mean, there was some rain I was told about, but even so, I mean, if that's the case, most people would just be like, fuck it, it's not sunny out, so I will go see a movie.
For sure.
It's interesting. I think there is a matter of, is there too much content? There's now that streamers are, I mean, if this movie came out, like I said, 10 years ago, even Fury Road was not a massive hit. It made its money back, but it almost struggled to do that. It was a big word of mouth thing for that movie. And that came out at a time where it was so unique and different versus all the comic book movie stuff and what action movies we were getting at the time, that it just knocked people's socks right off. And it was almost like a movie you had to go see.
Right. It became like like that movie you have to see. And it became a real word of mouth thing where people like, have you seen it yet? Have you seen it yet? And then it was like, wow, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I was there opening night. I remember it. I remember because our Alamo Draft House, I didn't work there yet, but I knew the projectionist already. And he told me, he's like, dude, just letting you know, I have the volume all the way up for this. So my head was pounding throughout the entire, it was in our large format theater. It was amazing. But, there's just so much to be said about people not going. There's also that faction of people that are like, listen, people are super rude. They talk during the movie. I see a ton of phones out. I have to sit through, I don't know what it's like up there, but at our AMC, it's literally half an hour of trailers and ads. Regal, 25, almost exactly the same. You're getting car commercials. And yes, people, if you're not going to like an Alamo Draft House where I do all my events and such, where we have a strict no phone policy, people do have their phone out. People record stuff. People are, I saw a kid recently like watching a YouTube video while the movie was playing, so there's that element as well, where people are just like, I don't want to deal with that. And when it comes to cost, there are awesome membership programs, the AMC, Regal, Alamo, other theater chains offer, where you can pay one price and go to the movies as much as you want. And I think AMC is a really fantastic one. You can go IMAX, Dolby, 3D. So there are options for people that do want to go a lot. I don't necessarily think it's the problem of the movie itself. I do think there's just so many opportunities for people to say, much like you just said a few minutes ago, I know it's going to be on streaming in 3 weeks. The Fall Guy was a perfect example. That is, I believe, already streaming. Or it's going to be in the next week.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
And that was just in theaters. I just saw that I feel like three or 4 weeks ago. You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
And that was another movie that underperformed drastically. There's also that conversation, which it's for another podcast altogether, but studios not focusing as much on, what can we do with this much rather than saying it has to be this much. Let's make a couple $70-80 million movies instead of like a bunch of $200 to $300 million movies. It's they're always taking that gamble. But I do believe what you said is true. I think this will find its audience. It may not find it right off the bat at the box office. It may be one of those movies where it just picks up a little bit and continues to make money. Godzilla X Kong was one of those. It wasn't a massive, huge hit right off the gate, but it slowly churned, made some money. The New Apes made some money. But I hope more people see it. It's one that begs to be seen on the biggest screen possible. Absolutely beautifully shot movie. I liken it to Dune 2 earlier this year. Another just beautiful, auteur-driven masterpiece of cinema. And that we bring up that word a lot on the show, but literally when you watch this thing, it's really hard to not put it into that category. So ladies and gentlemen, now that we're getting to the actual movie, as we always do, a quick synopsis of what the movie is. If you're uninitiated, you don't know what this movie is about, letting you know right now, full spoilers, not backing down on this one at all whatsoever. There's got to be a lot to be said here. So snatched from the green place of many mothers, young Furiosa falls into the hands of a great biker horde led by the warlord Dementus. Sweeping through the wasteland, they came across the Citadel, presided over the Morton Joe. As the two titans fight for dominance, Furiosa soon finds herself in a nonstop battle to make her way home. So here we are, almost 10 years after Fury Road.
Yeah.
The lights pop up, the credits roll. What are your initial reactions on Furiosa?
Again, loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought that there were so many things that this movie had kind of going against it, in the sense that it was a prequel. Not that, so instead of asking for a sequel to the movie, which there was very much when Fury Road ended, there was a lot of questions of what happened. I mean, they pull up to the Citadel and, they've got Buddy X on, his head on a pike or pretty much close to it. It's like, what happened? And I think there is a story to be told of what happens after Fury Road, but this is a prequel. So you've got the story before, you've got a recast of the main heroine. So you don't have the original Furiosa. You've got a new Furiosa. So you've got to
we've got two new Furiosas, actually.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Young, super young, and then young.
So you've got, exactly. So you've got you've recast it, but you know what? And there's a couple of other people that have been recast. But I just felt that I trusted George Miller, and I have this trust with George Miller when it comes to this franchise, because really he's never let me down. I mean, yes, some people do complain about Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but like when you watch it, it's still a pretty solid film. I think Tina Turner coming in was a bit of a weird one for a lot of people, especially in that, that time frame, because she was just such a massive solo artist. She was known from her, for her previous work, but then at that time when that movie came out, she was one of the biggest pop stars on the planet, so to have her in a Mad Max movie was like, what the fuck, but she delivers, she delivers.
I mean, it's my least favorite of them, but I've never hated it by any means.
No,
As a kid, I liked it even more,
Oh yeah.
At a young age.
Definitely. And hey, if they didn't have that, we've never had that great video with Tupac and
oh, that's true. That's true.
And Dre. But when I dove into this movie, I was like, from the minute it started, I was like, wow, they're going to nail this. They've got it. And Miller doesn't disappoint, man. When it comes to Mad Max, he never fucks up, in my opinion. And I think he's done, he knows the subject matter. It's his universe that he's created. It's very Australia centric, there's a lot of, there's so much stuff that's going on in this film that, like you can tell that family to him is very important, or his film family are important, because he's got a lot of the original people that have worked on all these movies along the way. When you listen to interviews with Chris Hemsworth, and he talks about how his dad used to ride with some of the original guys from the first Mad Max, how his dad has a part in the movie. His wife has a part in the movie. Like, it just feels like everybody was really excited to be a part of this.
It's almost like the let's go make a movie mentality, and just get your friends and family together and just go full force at it.
Which really was the spirit of the original Mad Max movie. I mean, the guy made it for no money, and he's always been that magic director that can pull shit off with almost nothing. Of course, now he's given as much money as he wants to make a movie, or at least a really healthy budget. But what's great about this movie is it feels like everybody came to fucking play, and everybody brought their A game. Nobody feels like they're dialing it in. And I mean, Anna Taylor-Joy was phenomenal. Chris Hemsworth, to me, steals the fucking movie.
Oh,
he is so good. Not once did I think that was Thor or that was Chris Hemsworth.
That nose helped a lot too, but
100%. But he's so good in the movie, and everybody brings their A game, and that's what I really appreciated with the film. Like, you didn't feel like, you felt like people wanted to show up for Miller. They were like, I want to help him make the best movie we can, and you felt the passion. It just flies off the screen, And man, I was enthralled. I was like a little kid. It was like, I think it's 2 hours and 38 minutes or 2 hours and 40 minutes or 28. I can't remember, but it felt like, I don't know about you, but for me, it felt like 90-minute movie. It went by so quick. Like, I did not at once feel like the movie was lagging. Was that the same for you?
I think expectations need to be made. Obviously watching the trailer, you can kind of capture that it's not going to be the actioner that Fury Road is. Not that I wanted it to be, not that I expected it to be, but there are expectations, I think, that need to be made. This is a much more character-driven story. It takes its time, its plotting, its pacing. It is evenly paced. I never felt like you could cut this out or you could cut that out, because even 1 or 2 seconds in this world with those wide shots of the desert, even if there's no dialogue, none of Tom Hulkenberg's score, anything like that.
Yeah.
I just loved being there. I was immersed, and that's
it. You're transported.
Yeah. Miller's one of those directors that is able to do that immediately from the first frame, the first shot of the movie. I was grabbed. And I mean, obviously I was anticipating this a lot. I am in that, category of cinephiles, film critics, whatever you want to call us, that thought and still does that Fury Road is one of the greatest action movies ever made. Yeah. Not just in the past 20 years, but like ever made. Yeah. It's up there with T2. Yeah. You name it. It's one of those. And, I'm by no means am I as big of a fan of the series as, on your caliber or anything like that. But I grew up watching them, and, I knew right off the bat that he was not going to be able to bring Charlize back. So Anya, who I love and adore and everything she does, she's one of those that for me, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a Renaissance drama. I'm there to watch it because I love her performances. Queen's Gambit, I don't give a shit about chess. I watched it because I love her performance. Yeah. She's fantastic, but I think, Aaliyah Brown, who plays Furiosa as a child, needs even deservedly, maybe even more credit because she does an almost silent performance for the majority of her time on screen, and she is brilliant. She acts with her eyes, her mannerisms, and I didn't realize how much of the story was going to take place, on her shoulders. I mean, I feel like it's almost half and half.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because we do spend a lot of time with the young Furiosa, and like every good revenge movie, because it is, these movies are pretty much revenge.
100%.
I think that the setup is great, and you really you want revenge for Furiosa, and I mean we're talking openly now, right?
Oh, 100% open. Okay, yeah. The floodgates are open, man.
Right. So the way that, yeah. So the way this movie, the way we conclude, the way she does get her revenge, it's fucking brilliant. Seeing, Hemsworth all fucked up, being part of that tree, and I just thought it was very, like you said, it was very well paced. The casting was brilliant, and yeah, that kid was great. She did a phenomenal job. And I find sometimes when you get the child version, like the child version of Anakin with Jake Lloyd, it can be a little like,
right, yeah,
we're pod racing now, but it didn't feel like that at all with this younger version.
I mean, you immediately feel for this character because she's just with her sister out picking fruit, and as mischievous as she is, she goes to go cut the gas lines on what she sees as these intruders in their land, their area, and she gets caught. And then, of course, her mom. She hears the whistle. Super badass. Exciting. Oh, I love her. Oh my God. She needs to be talked about even more. I mean, I swear to God, if they are going to give us a new Wonder Woman, I say cast her.
Yeah.
She was so fucking badass. But the opening sequence is so exciting. It just jumps right in. It just jumps right in. And then you immediately feel for the character, and you feel for her mother, and you don't even get much of, really, you don't get any of their relationship prior to these events, but you feel it. And that's what Miller is brilliant at doing. You get connected to these characters and their family unit, even without seeing what it was like. You just know that there's this beautiful, lush landscape that this very small society lives in, and she's pulled from it.
Yeah.
And I yearned to see her back there too. The whole movie, I kept saying, I want to see her back there. I want to see her get back there. And we, unfortunately, spoiler alert, we know, not in any part of any film that we've seen released is going to show that yet.
No. Now, let me ask you something. On her arm, of course, and there's that whole thing you're waiting, like, how does she lose her fucking arm, right? How does she lose her arm? I was convinced when they were showing on her arm that that was that map to get back home. Yeah. I was convinced that she was going to cut her arm off at one point to not let anyone get back there. But that's not what happens. But I was like, oh man, at one point I'm like, that's how she loses her arm. She's going to cut off her own fucking arm so nobody finds the lush green place. And that's not what happens. It gets torn off. Like, she kind of gnaws it off in a way just to get out of it.
She leaves it. She leaves the arm, but no one.
So, yeah. But in my mind, I'm like, why don't you just grab the fucking arm? There's the map to get back. But I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity, where I would have been like, show that she chops it off to sacrifice not giving people, not letting anybody know how to get back there. But yeah,
it would have been a really, really powerful character moment for sure. I do agree with you.
Yeah.
And when we see that scene, she gets captured really quickly.
Yeah.
And they have her strung up, and then next thing you know, they look and she's gone, and the arm's just hanging there. I was like, okay, not what I expected at all. And there would have been a great character moment. It would have been even more of a strong moment than a lot of the stuff we got in the movie had she done that. And I kept wondering, like, well, she's got the map, and also now, like, does she like remember how to get back there?
Yeah.
Like, she had the map on her arm the whole time, and now it's gone.
And then she's going up that hill, throttling, on a motorcycle, throttling with one arm. I'm like, Jesus Christ! But it was. I
mean, how badass is that, though? I mean, really, it's
badass. And the other thing I really liked was the guy who played like her mentor on the Fury Road. Who was driving the rig, who obviously was a nod back to Mad Max. I mean, there's points when he's walking on the road and he
looks just like him.
He looks like one of the MP. I forget. I get lambasted by people if they listen to this, but one of the MPH officers or whatever. He had that look, like he looked like Max. He had that same, and I'm sure that was purposely done to kind of give a nod back to Max because that he was great. He was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, Praetorian Jack. Right? He was played by Tom Burke.
Yeah.
I loved how stoic he was. He was almost like, to me, he fits perfectly in the shoes of, the absence of Max, because ladies and gentlemen, you see Mad Max in one shot in this, and the whole rest of the movie, he is absent.
There's no Mad Max. Yeah. It's just like, and exactly. It's like, it's that shot of him at the beginning of Fury Road when so it's supposed to, I think it's showing that, this is all going on while that's going on. And it's kind of cool. It's a nice nod, but yeah, that's the other fucking thing I heard. I was on a Mad Max Facebook group for about 7-8 years. And over the last week, I saw so much hate on this thing that I got out of that group. And you know how bad Facebook fan groups can be. They can either be a really cool place or they can be the most negative space. And because so many people were just gunning for this movie, because they thought there was no Mad Max and the lead should not have been a female. It should have been, Mad Max. And why are you calling it a Mad Max movie? But like, dude, even in Fury Road, Tom Hardy's great, but come on, Charlize Theron steals the show. There's no doubt about it. When you think of that, you think of her. So she earned her stripes. The fact that we're getting a Furiosa movie is because she's so badass. And I don't know, maybe I'm just not stupid, but I never thought that when I was watching the movie, like, oh, we need Max. Like, who gives a fuck? There's other stories to be told in the waste. Yeah. Exactly. Because you're not a fucking idiot. But there are idiots out there.
Thank you.
No, but there are idiots out there that's
100%.
The first thing.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man. Like it's, would I like to see a film with an old Mad Max? Yes. And let me just tell you this quickly before I forget. Someone told me something when I left the theater, which I thought was really a very, very interesting theory. That wild boy in the Road Warrior, like the one who's like kind of the crazy who throws the boomerang.
Yeah, of course.
So someone had a theory that Tom Hardy's Mad Max in Fury Road is that kid grown up. And I thought it really makes sense because when you think of it, when we see Max, and this kid is taking Max's name, do you know what I mean? Like, right. I don't know. It's kind of interesting because when you think of it, Mad Max, like Hardy's Max, when he starts talking at the beginning, almost sounds like he's like not 100% there. Do you know what I mean? Like he doesn't. So when someone told me that, I was like, that fucking is a really cool fan theory.
It's very interesting. It's very confusing with Miller because the only thing that I could gather was that he said that this takes place after Thunderdome, but then at the same time, there is no strict timeline to these things. So, I mean,
but if it takes place after Thunderdome, it would make sense that this kid who saw Max, who was so influenced by Max, grew up to look like Max or to act like Max, take his name, take his identity. It kind of makes sense.
I have no issue with fan theories like that. Like I always like to enjoy, and I like that people find ways to make things work for them in a certain way. By no means, this is a question that needs to be brought up. Why the hell not? You're such a huge fan. Sure. Would you have been cool with seeing Gibson come back in any capacity?
Oh, fuck yeah, man. Listen, everybody's got their guys or girls or stars that they give a pass to. Like, okay, I've got a couple that I just can't ever go back and listen to or watch anymore. For me, like Michael Jackson, like biggest disappointment for me. I just can't listen to his music anymore. Every time it comes on, even though my toe's tapping, I feel like I shouldn't be toe tapping. it just depends on who you talk to about certain. For me, Gibson, maybe it's because I've been in recovery so long. Like I've been sober 31 years. I kind of give him a pass because he was a really bad raging alcoholic that got caught saying some really stupid things when he was fucking probably in a fucking blackout. So I've kind of given him a pass. I see someone like Jodie Foster who had him in The Beaver. I look at that and I'm like, if Jodie Foster, who I think is a pretty much an upstanding person of character, who I really respect, who you've never heard anything bad come out on, if she's willing to give Mel Gibson a pass, then I'm thinking maybe he wasn't as bad as people make him out to be. Yeah, of course he said some really stupid things. I mean, dude, I'm half Jewish. So, I can definitely understand why some people might have had an issue with Gibson, but I just think Gibson was in a really dark time and he was drinking a fuck ton, kind of like Alec Baldwin, when he said some of the shit he said. But I'm really, I would have loved to have seen an old Mad Max, and I would love if Miller eventually did something with an old Mad Max, because it would be cool. But I'm also very cool with him not being a part of this and not doing that thing where they're just doing fan service where they pull back somebody to do, like Harrison Ford's done in all his stuff, like one last time. It's cool. But I love the fact that this universe can exist and continue without him.
Exactly. Exactly. I would have been cool with it. I also really liked when they brought in Tom Hardy for Fury Road. I thought he was a great choice.
Great
position.
Yeah.
I also, much like you, I always do my best due diligence to separate art from artist. You just mentioned Michael Jackson, one of my favorite artists of all time, and that'll always be that way. But we always have our own personal connection to that and how we how we go through that, how we deal with that. And I've been watching most of Gibson's stuff he's been releasing since all that happened. Like The Beaver was a fucking amazing movie. I thought it was fantastic.
So was Payback.
Funny. Yeah. I mean, he's done a bunch of stuff, since that all happened that I've really enjoyed. Hacksaw Ridge, he directed that, loved that movie. So, but it would be interesting to see. I do love the idea that because I always love when a filmmaker that created something iconic and legendary many years later can come back and do a new, fresh take on it within the same world with new characters.
Yeah.
Or in this case, the continuation or, the predation of the character that we saw in Fury Road. And I love how it connects exactly to Fury Road, like right to the second. It's so right
good.
There.
Like she walks in to get all the all the virgins, and I'm putting you in the rig, and we're getting the fuck out of here.
And there it is.
It was perfect.
I do have to mention, I know you mentioned him a little bit ago, but I mean, really, I think Hemsworth is underrated in a lot of ways. And I'm not a huge fanboy. I like him as Thor. I think he's great, but I've loved his work as a villain. He's done it before, and people always forget that he's done it before. And here he was just really top notch. I mean, you don't see villains this memorable that often anymore. And he just you could tell he oozed charisma through this whole thing. He was having so much fun.
He's one of the great on-screen villains after this performance. And I think it's going to be remembered as that. And you'll see, listen, man, a lot of the time these movies have to find their footing. Same thing with Blade Runner 2049. Like
one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay. So Blade Runner is my favorite movie of all time. Like it's my top. Like I love Mad Max, but Blade Runner is my top. Ridley Scott, like Blade Runner, top movie of all time. 2049, I absolutely loved. Okay. And it was so funny how, I think it came out 6 years ago, or maybe 6-7 years ago. I remember 5 years after, people were like, I read this article, why Blade Runner 2049 is the masterpiece you need to see. And it's like, man, it was the same fucking thing with the first movie. It took time to get its audience. Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner came out, man, was a fucking flop, dude.
Yep.
Can you imagine now knowing that movie the way you know it and how much people respect it, to think that was a theatrical flop?
How influential it was as well.
Yeah. So you know what? How much money something makes sometimes doesn't fucking matter. The fact is that this movie is going to be remembered as, it's going to be remembered as a great film. I think Furiosa is going to be a must see for a lot of people, and you'll see the streaming numbers will be through the fucking roof on this. And I'm just seeing in all my fan groups, like I'm that, cause I think you buy movies too. Do you buy DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff? Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
There's a couple of shelves. And also I do get early copies from studios and stuff.
Yeah. Same. So listen, I've seen how many of my friends have pre-ordered the Steelbook of Furiosa already off Best Buy. It's like, this movie's going to have like another life, and it's going to continue. And when more people see it, because the reality is it will find its audience streaming, and then people are going to watch it and go, holy fuck, that was really good. I should have saw that in the theater. And you'll see it's going to get what I think is going to happen. And I'm looking forward to it. And it'll probably happen at Alamo. They'll do a Furiosa Fury Road screening, which they should.
We tried. Studio said no this year, but maybe they will eventually. They probably will eventually let us do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it'll be amazing when that happens, because it's meant to be seen like one long streaming thing, you know. So
and it's interesting. I wanted to bring this up, not to cut you off or anything there.
No, of course,
because there's the element of this movie that is different than Fury Road, and it needs to be discussed. Is that it's not an actioner all the way through. Where Fury Road, once it starts, there's very little breathing room. You know what I mean? For you, yeah, exactly. Pedal to the metal. This movie takes its time, but there is that 15-minute action sequence where we have Anya Taylor-Joy's Furiosa, where she teams up with Praetorian Jack, and she goes on her first big ride. Apparently, George Miller named it the Stairway to Nowhere, where it's 15 minutes straight. It took 78 days to shoot, and there were like 200 some people working on it every single day. Extensive storyboarding. And Anya Taylor-Joy had talked about in interviews how huge of an undertaking this thing was to do the conversations they had, the planning and all of that. This to me was honestly, I could have just had this as the one big action sequence in the movie. I felt it filled the gap for me perfectly in between all the character stuff, because there is action throughout the movie. It's not as high octane, but the movie moves around. You're constantly moving. It's not like you're sitting in one place for too long.
No.
Was that an action sequence that got you all goosebumped up?
Oh my God. Yeah. And that the thing is, when people are talking about how this film, it lagged, I'm like, I don't understand how you could think this movie lagged. Like, dude, there's that. They talked about that. And then they talk about the use of CGI. And like,
of course,
I'll admit the first trailer that I saw was very heavily CGI'd because things weren't smoothed out and it wasn't really, but man, yes, CGI is used in this film, but dude, the amount of practical that's done in this movie, like, let's give it some fucking respect. Way more than a lot of shit that I've had to sit through over the last 10 years. You know, like, there's so many DC movies that I've watched that I just couldn't fucking look at anymore because of the CGI. They were so bad. Like, okay, here comes this big CGI villain at the end, like, that has no soul, that I'm not, like, this had none of that.
I find that people give things a pass that they want to give a pass, and then they'll 100%. Shit on other movies for doing even less of that same thing.
Right.
You know, obviously Fury Road, yes, it's pretty much all practical. It's all real. There's minimal CG. And now we're almost 10 years later, and Miller's a different filmmaker, and he's finding his way of making this movie the best way he can with the tools he has. Almost every movie has CGI in it. So for me, it didn't take me out of it at all whatsoever. That first trailer, though, it was pretty apparent, because everyone, you noticed it right off the bat.
Yeah. Oh, I was worried when I saw that trailer. I was like, oh man, I'm fucking scared. And I think a lot of people were, but then another one was released, and then, but I think a lot of people, again, because of fucking, the internet, and because of people's opinions, and everyone loves to just shoot off from the mouth. You watch the trailer, and I saw the trailer, it's CG, and there's people giving opinions.
That's the only thing they use as their perspective on if they'll see it or not. Yeah. If
you say that this movie has too much CGI and that it took you out of the movie, then you did not fucking watch the movie. You just saw the trailer and you're full of shit. There's no way. Because like you, I mean, I watched this movie and there's not one moment where I was like, that CGI took me out of the movie. Not at all.
Nothing pulled me out.
I was in the wasteland the whole fucking time. You know what I mean? The whole time I was in the wasteland. The same way when I watched 2049, the minute you're like, you just hear that bong and you're in the fucking cruiser or whatever, the spinner car. I'm in the universe. I'm there in that universe for 3 hours, and that's how it was with Fury Road. Like, I was in the wasteland for that whole time and I didn't leave. So, going back to your question about the action sequence, like, I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really good. All the, just the pacing of it, and the fact that it was so goddamn long, but
it was long. It
was so good. And like, when you see a movie and you're like, I can't wait to watch that again at home, when I can really watch that again. And like I'll go see Furiosa again in the theater, but I can't wait till I have my own copy so I can stop things. I can rewind things. Like I love being able to do that. It's just, there's certain things that, when you do have your own copy and you're at home, it's just great to do that. And when you watch a movie in a theater that makes you want to own the movie, that like, I was like, I cannot wait to buy this movie. Cannot wait.
That's the best feeling. That's how you know if that's going to be a thumbs up or thumbs down, or in our case, a trash it or treasure it, which we're going to get to in a few minutes here. Yeah. But that's, that's what level it has to be at. Do I want to own this? And I'm not going to lie to you, man. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to own anything anymore. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, 20, sure, I'd go, that was good. That was fun. I want to own all of it. And now I'm like, you know what? I watched it once. I don't need to own that movie. Maybe it'll be on streaming, but I don't need to have that in my personal collection. And this is one of those, and I will be totally open and honest about this. It wasn't as good as Fury Road for me. It wasn't quite to that level, but it was right there next to it. I mean, it's a companion piece in the purest form possible, in the best way possible. And I wasn't disappointed by any means by it. And I think that's where it needed to get for me, because it's like, again, think of something came out after Terminator 2, which it did. We've seen what's come after that. I mean, when you hit this level of greatness that is so high, it is impossible to really get quite there. You might get close. Yeah. And I mean, but it's hard to name any filmmaker that really has done that, where they've come back, made one of the best action movies of all time, and then really overdid it and actually, you know what I mean? Like they got better than what they did the last time.
I mean, I think, there's a couple of, like obviously with Aliens versus Alien. I mean, I think Aliens is better than Alien.
Right. I mean, but I'm saying if you've already made that great action movie, because Alien is not an action movie, so it's after you, like, if for Cameron, I did Aliens, could he come back and have done an Alien 3 that was going to be better than Aliens? That's the question. But
right.
You know what I mean? But this movie, it lives up to the Mad Max name. And I think for me, at least, I know you're a huge fan of the older movies, but for me, this just jumped up next to Fury Road as probably my second favorite of the bunch.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's up there. And unlike, being a fan of the original Star Wars trilogy, unlike my feelings on, the prequels and then like the movies after, which, I mean, I like all of it,
I do too.
For me, it's always going to be about the original stuff that I saw when I was a kid. Fury Road was able to surpass the Road Warrior almost for me. But then when not surpass it, but Fury Road was like, it's right there. They're right next to each other. That's what I mean about Miller. He hasn't let me down yet. And this, he didn't let me down again with this. The only thing that's concerning is that, well, it's not too concerning because who knows how far they're going to take Mad Max now. It all depends. But I think when Miller's not doing this, no one else should. Like, I hope they don't ever give the reins over to someone else, because I think Mad Max should end with Miller. Like, if Miller's not doing it, I don't think Mad Max should continue. That's my opinion.
I don't totally disagree with that sentiment. That's kind of like the same I have with, Robert Zemeckis in Back to the Future. It's almost like the same thing.
Sure.
Like,
same thing. Don't fuck with it.
Just leave it be. And that's, and unless, I mean, I'm not even saying I would want Zemeckis to come back and make another one, but if he did, I'd be open to it. Sure. It's just that, some movies are just better left to their creator and that creative vision, and only that person is going to be able to get it to that purest form that it actually is. And I think Miller just proved again with this movie, not only does he still got it, he's got more in him than a lot of younger filmmakers making movies right now. And, bigger balls,
79, 80, like, I don't know, he's 79 or 80, right?
He's so old, and he's making better. Again, this is no slight to other action movies. There's been a ton of fun action movies the past 5 or so years, but to this level, to that precision, you just can't beat the greats. So I think we've gotten to the end here with, it's time for our final thoughts on this thing and trash it or treasure it. So I'm going to give you your final thoughts. And are you going to trash this movie or treasure it?
Oh God, treasure, man. Treasure it. Like,
we already knew, but I have to ask the question.
I'm going to treasure it. I'm going to put it up on the mantle. I'm going to polish it. It's treasure for me. 100%.
And for me as well. Oh yeah, 100%. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you guys know this because a few weeks ago we announced we were probably going to bring back the 1 through 10 scale traditional movie rating, and you all said, fuck that, don't do it. You said to keep trash it or treasure it. So, what this would be at a number rating scale, I can't say right off the bat, but it is a treasure. There is one thing I did want to bring up before we close, which is Junkie XL's score. which I'm not saying it was disappointing to me, but his score for Fury Road is just like a masterpiece of music. I listen to it at the gym all the time. It's just, and I liked his music here. It was good. I found it interesting that some of the action scenes were almost silent with almost no score. But I thought that was cool. And I liked that they took a different approach to that, because if the movie had been, wall to wall music like Fury Road is, then it would have felt too much like that. I don't know. I like that it was a slightly different vibe to this movie. I'm sure you're a music guy, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like the Fury Road soundtrack was pretty epic. I'm a big fan of what Brian May did in Mad Max and Mad Max 2. So I like that traditional kind of like, orchestral kind of stuff. But listen, Junkie XL's music in Fury Road is brilliant. The Furiosa, I think it's whoever's taken over from Mondo now. There's another, I think they're called Mutanoid. That it's the Mondo guys that have taken over and like started their own record label. They're doing a version of Furiosa on vinyl, and I'm definitely going to pick that up. But I did like the fact that they kind of pulled back, and that again, that's one of the reasons why I love owning a movie, because then I can really sit and maybe see some things and hear some things that I didn't really pick up on because I was so excited the first time. But I did notice the lack of music in some spots, but I like that. I really, really liked it. It did feel like it breathed a bit more.
Yeah, and like we were saying before, if I want Fury Road, I'll go watch Fury Road. This is Furiosa, and I liked that this is its own movie, even though it has a distinct feeling that matches what the intensity of that movie. But it's still its own thing, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our review of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Thank you again, Jason, for joining me from the Rockman Power Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out Jason and what he does in his social media, Jason, tell our listeners where they can find you, where you at, where can they listen, where can they watch?
You can find me on Instagram at The Real Jason Rockman. You can also find us anywhere you keyword Rockman Power Hour. You can stream us anywhere you listen to your podcast, and you can find us on YouTube as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us for this Furiosa episode. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time listening, thank you so much. And if you're a long-term listener, we love you. Thanks for your support. We can also be found at Epic Film Guys, literally every single place on the internet, and our podcast can be listened to also every single place where you can listen to podcasts. But once again, thank you, Jason, for joining me. It was an absolute honor. I can't wait to talk more on other subjects, man. I had a lot of fun with this episode. I think there's more to be seen down the path here for us. So thanks again, man.
I would love it, man. I really enjoyed it. And man, I'm just looking forward to seeing what's next for the summer because man, it's going to be an interesting one for movies. So hold on, because the movies are going to change in the next few years.
Hey, and I'll be there for it. And so will you. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, thanks for listening to the Epic Film Guys. Until next time.